What if what we call public opinion was just a manufactured narrative that makes it easier to convince people that if their views are different, that there's something wrong with that or there's something wrong with them?
Spending is a tax. As soon as the government spends money, eventually it's a tax. Sometimes we put a direct tax on the people, sometimes we borrow the money, and sometimes we print the money.
Freedom and the dignity of the individual have been more available and assured here than in any other place on earth.
The Patrick Riggins Show. And now your host, Patrick Riggins.
I was waiting on the music. Okay. Welcome again to the Patrick Riggins Show this week. We are having fun today. Bouncing Patrick around different studios, trying to get the feeds worked in. This week, I'm actually sitting in a different studio than I was last week. I'm sitting in one that's got all kinds of buttons and dials, and boy, I could just screw this show up in short order. But anyway, welcome to the Patrick Riggins Show. This is the one place you can refuel your freedom and liberty tanks for the upcoming week. And you know, lately it's been taking a lot of energy to get through the 7 days of stupidity and ignorance being demonstrated by both Congress and the president. Is it me, or does it sometimes seem like a race to see which side can violate their oaths of office quicker? But before we get going here, let me add that you're listening to the Patrick Riggins Show on the Libertarian Lighthouse Radio Network and locally here in Knoxville on News Talk 98.7 WOKI. But getting back into this, let's be honest, as you've come to expect me to always be on this show. Our federal government, well, it's become a circus. The reason that rodeo clown got in trouble wearing an Obama mask a few weeks ago is, I think it's because it hit too close to home. These people up there in Washington are nothing but clowns. The problem is their antics are costing us citizens our money and, unfortunately for some of us, our lives. But for those people, we're all told they're heroes. They're fighting for freedom and democracy. No, they're not. They're fighting because a bunch of jackasses in Washington, D.C. decided it was a good idea to send our soldiers to die for people other than Americans. That's not what our military is supposed to be used for. It's to defend us, American citizens. There's not too many of them in Afghanistan or Iraq or even Syria or Libya or Egypt. And if they are over there, hey, we should just tell them, you're on your own. If you're not smart enough to stay out of an unstable country, well, don't expect us to come over and save you. If Americans are over there and get killed because we sent them there, for example, Benghazi, then we should be bringing up the people who signed their orders on charges. You sent them to a known war zone where we shouldn't have been in the first place. You're responsible if something happens to them. You know, personally, if I'm working for the CIA and I get told I'm going to a war-torn country to train fighters to fight in Syria, I'm going to tell them go jump in the lake. But Patrick, they'd get fired for that. Hey, that's fine. I'm alive. I'll find another job to do here in this country that doesn't require me working with Al-Qaeda. That's what we're going to eventually find out was happening in Benghazi. We had CIA people over there training fighters to go fight in Syria. These were the same people we were dealing with in Afghanistan against the Russians back in the 80s, the groups that became Al-Qaeda. We're already hearing bits and pieces of that story starting to drizzle out here and there. That's why all the cover-up over at the State Department and the CIA. Hillary wouldn't have had too much of a chance to become president if she had been cavorting around with terrorists in Benghazi, even if it was to train them to fight against, Syrian President Bashar Assad. So now the terrorists over there in Syria, they start losing the war, and they decide to gas some people to bring the United States in on their side. We talked about this last week. That's why our so-called leaders in Washington are itching to go over there. They want to make sure any of our fingerprints are covered up. We don't want any of those people talking about how we or the Israelis supplied them with, training and or munitions for carrying out those chemical attacks. Now, we probably warned them not to do anything stupid like that, but of course they didn't listen. So now we have rogue units over there in Syria causing trouble. And the last thing we need now is for them to start telling some reporter how we abandoned them when we promised we'd help. If they did that, President Obama and a lot of people in Congress would have a lot of explaining to do. The American people don't want to be involved in this mess over there. I was looking through the paper, and a recent NBC Wall Street Journal poll found that 79% of Americans agreed the president must receive congressional approval before authorizing airstrikes against Syria. Another poll by, it's the Economist/YouGov poll, they found that 41% believe the president must always get congressional approval prior to the use of force. The issue with Syria is that only 21% of the public views the Syrian civil war as an immediate threat to U.S. national security. That's the only bright spot in the news on this situation. So far, the American people aren't falling for the smokescreen this time. I attribute a large part of that to shows like this one. Shows that encourage people to think and not just accept whatever's being told to them. That combined with the internet, where a ton of information can be found on the Middle East and what we've been doing over there throughout the years and how they've been fighting on and off amongst themselves for thousands of years. All of that has made the government's job that much harder in justifying these insane wars. Oh, real quick, speaking of killing people, I ran across this here. Have you thought about all of this in relation to the drug cartels slaughtering people just over our southern border? Heck, they're even doing it right here in our own country, on our side of the border. I got some numbers here. In 2012, there were 7,234 total dead in Mexico due to the drug war. 7,234 people dead. And we're going crazy over people almost half a world away being killed. Since 2007, there have been over 4,000 police killed as well. And yet we need to go to Syria to teach them a lesson. And it isn't just limited to Mexico. This violence extends all through Central and South America. But we need to go to Syria. That's the important place, Syria. When massive, unwarranted killing occurs right at our back door, but we refuse to do anything about it. We even have Americans dying on our side of the border, but nothing gets done. Syria. That's the main objective. Why is that? Well, your guess is as good as mine. I guess I don't know, maybe Mexico had more oil reserves or was located near some in the Middle East, kind of a linchpin country in there. We might be more interested in what's going on down there as well. This slaughtering of, Mexicans and Americans down there. They're all humans either way you go. But I guess they don't count as much. So sorry, fellow humans who just happen to live on or across the southern border. Your lives they're not as important as those in Syria. Too bad for you, I guess. All men may be created equal, but I guess just like real estate, it's location, location, location. And Mexico's people's location, just doesn't make their lives as important as the ones in the Middle East. Sad to say, but I guess that's the only conclusion we can really draw from all this. Well, that and we got to get our fingerprints off everything that was going on over there in Syria and clean up Benghazi, too. That's why the big cover-up in Benghazi. This is going to continue coming out little by little. But if we string the report out over the next year, it's a lot easier to take than if we just come right out and say, oh, yeah, we were training people, and, well, we might have given them some stuff, too, to help them acquire chemical weapons, and then they used them on their own people. That would make us liable, so we don't want any of that. Anyway, we are up on our first break here, and this week, like every week, we're jam-packed with fresh, organically grown freedom and liberty. We'll start harvesting it when we come back here on the Patrick Riggin Show on the Libertarian Lighthouse Radio Network.